Daniel May, and today I'm going to be giving you an overview of legislation within our industry, playing particularly into sort of doors and ironmongery, because that's my speciality field, how modern compliance is changing the landscape of building design and fire safety, the responsibilities of decision makers from design stage, specification and procurement to responsible persons, fire risk assessments, and why improved communication throughout this supply chain is key. The minimum requirement for architectural ironmongery products and why the importance of third-party certification is so key, and why performance and durability matters in context of the fire industry and safety as well. How UK and European standards will differ and international standards, and why all of the compliance isn't homogenized. So my speciality field, as a quick summary, is architectural ironmongery. Consort is the business I work for, and we've been going for about 50 years. Some of the trade industry bodies that you'll see at the bottom, we try to adhere to. These are both American and UK mainly led, although these sectors are quite often, these bodies are used widely throughout the world, including the Middle East and Asia, tending to also comply to Guild of Architectural Ironmongers or DHI in America, depending on country by country. We tend to associate with both because we've got products that are fit for both the North American market and the European market. When it comes to the production of our built environment, speed and sustainability benefits of modular construction continue to turn heads within the construction sector. Yet, as a method, it continues to advance. Those involved in the procurement of modular components and materials must continue to give consideration to supply and transportation of these to ensure that the feasibility and efficiency, as well as the level of standards within the industry, continue to evolve. At the heart of any building's operation is its access points, or more specifically, its doors, designed to facilitate access and egress through the building. These play a crucial role in compartmentalization, fire safety, and security of the infrastructure as a whole, and regularly need to be reviewed as part of an ongoing risk assessment. For me, within our industry, the key to fire protection is a compartmentalization of a building through the use of its fire doors. Without correctly specified ironmongery, seals, intumescent, and fire doors could be considered basically useless. Just as important is the durability, as fire doors are not just for the next 3 months, but they are for the longevity of the whole building, the whole life cycle. If you put that into, this is why, although there are many fire tests that go on, etc., clients also need to pay huge attention to the durability of the products that are being used and the category of uses that they're suitable for. Within EN standards, there are categories of use depending on the how high use the buildings are likely to be, such as hospitals and schools are seen as very high use and extremely hard wearing ironmongery indoors required. These tend to be to two classifications: EN standards for durability, and then in America there's also ANSI BHMA codes. These are the two that tend to play a huge part within those industries, and that people will refer back to those, whether in the Middle East, Asia, and other areas as well. Fire safety itself is a complex topic covering a wide range of subjects and themes, from prevention to containment and evacuation. all of which carry great significance when designing and maintaining a fire-safe building. For buildings architects, specifiers, inspectors and owners, it's imperative to provide an acceptable level of fire safety for the occupants and visitors alike, and for this, fire doors play an integral role. Recognised as part of a building's passive fire protection system, fire doors are a means of escape and tasked with compartmentalisation, smoke, fire during a fire incident. In doing so, they protect the property and its people for a specified time, most commonly resisting for 30 or 60 minutes in timber doors, or up to even as much as 240 minutes in steel doors. Each stakeholder plays an important role in ensuring compliance. Architects and design teams play an important role in ensuring the specifications of the product meet the requirements of the end users. The relationship with durability and quality is hugely important, ensuring the use of hardware that lives up to the safety standards, the role of regulations and compliance. Contractors have to ensure they build a compliant building to the current codes and standards. These are constantly evolving, and therefore what is essentially the design building at the beginning may not meet compliance by the time this building actually goes into construction. They also need to ensure that the end users have the information they need to carry out compliance post handover, as this is becoming ever more prevalent with things such as building information management, and the aim is that this will help our end users to ensure life safety long term. Manufacturers have the responsibility to ensure their hardware and doors in our industry are up to task, making the specification and installation of these systems easier for the end users as well. The importance of transparency and third-party testing is so important. There are so many different levels of testing, but all fire doors require in Europe to be CE marked. UK CA marking is required in the UK, although that CE marking is still accepted and will be for the next 2.5 years, as that was extended just before Christmas. Responsible persons, end users and facilities managers need to carry out their due diligence. For access points and for fire doors specifically, British standards recommend a building's designated responsible person conduct regular visual checks of all locks, hinges, apertures, frames and leaves, alongside 6-month periodic maintenance. This was actually something referenced in the Hackett report post Grenfell as well, in the fact that fire doors were definitely not up to the required standards. Developing frameworks. So to eliminate vulnerabilities, hardware in accordance with the UK Construction Product Regulation, CPR, must be CE marked, as we touched on earlier, or UK CA marked, again, as we touched on earlier, from the 1st of January 2023. If the products carry either of those marks, they must have been tested to fire. It's a criminal offence to supply products that do not comply. This has changed slightly recently. All products that carry this mark should have relevant declarations of performance available freely through company websites as a minimum. CE marking was due to be ruled out at the end of last year, as we mentioned, but this has been extended. To achieve CE marking / UK CA marking, you require both fire evidence and durability evidence. We'll discuss the fire point in the next slide. In our industry, key components of hardware on a door are door controls, hinges and locks. They've had a vital role in facilitating the closing and latching motion. Door closers play an active role in ensuring a fire door accomplishes compartmentation. Because their significance, controlled closing devices must be tested to EN 1154, and the cycle element test is over twice as many cycles as other elements. Manufacturers quite often choose to certificate further by a third-party scheme, such as Certifier or BM Trada, etc. This, although not always required, is seen as a positive within the industry. There are similar schemes for North America from Intertek and UL, which test at ANSI standards and fire test to UL 10C. They also have BHMA scheme, which again is seen as an extra over, but not technically a must-have. There has been a huge increase in demand for fire door inspections. These should now be regularly carried out to ensure well-maintained fire doors, as over time, perfectly compliant fire doors can become non-compliant, whether through abuse, weather, or lack of maintenance. Lack of maintenance over time, to name a few. This was brought to light post-Grenfell within the Hackett report. Leading on from recent inquiries in the UK, it's been a major requirement to ensure correct information is available to end users and facilities managers, the golden thread of information as such, so they can now ensure compliance moving forward post-construction. For new builds, the aim is that BIM will hopefully be able to achieve this from the very beginning of the project. It's also hoped that this will ensure flagging potential issues during construction before it's too late. Within the door industry, many doors are being tagged. These tags holding key information regarding all products and materials within the door, and also certification and maintenance of them. Both hardware industry through the Guild of Architectural Ironmongers, or door hardware industry in America, and door industry equivalents try to ensure offering relevant CPDs to clients. This will help continuous learning as it's a constantly evolving subject. RIBA even offer approved CPDs, which allow architects to get points for continuous learning. These are offered by many manufacturers and not just within our industries, but across the whole construction sector. Potential change in UK regulations has occurred just before Christmas. There's been multiple discussions and reviews ongoing since Grenfell discussed the best way forward. This has culminated in several of the points discussed on previous fields. Biggest potential change in our industry currently being reviewed is the move to EN 1634 from BS 476. As this has technically been in place for some time, this means no changes can actually be made to BS 476 under European rules. This means BS 476 can't be amended, and as such, probably not fit for purpose long term, really, even if the industry wanted to remain with it. The key differences between EN 1634 and 476 are the methods of the testing itself. For instance, in our industry, the pressures on the doors are totally different. There's a lot more restrictions on assessment / approvals of material which are not directly tested. These XAPs, as they're known, are very limited and will reduce choice and increase testing requirements within the industry. Testing required in both directions nowadays for fire doors, if this goes through, for all restraining door hardware. These are within the door hardware industry specifically, but I do know that the level of complication / compatibility varies from very little in some industries to hugely difficult in others. There's a lot of reviews going on at the moment with regards to trade industries trying to get their views back. This actually has to be back in March for government consultation. The issues around this change vary from industry to industry, but if this is enforced within the 1 year period, it's likely to have major issues. There is just not enough capacity within the fire laboratories in the UK to soak up the extra testing required. This has even come from the test labs themselves. We already have 8-month lead times within some. Most timber door manufacturers still test to BS 476 and as such would need to retest everything. Hardware would potentially need to be retested for every door core, including each type of door and in both directions for certain items. This is just within the fire door industry, but the changes would affect all products required to be fire tested from 476 to EN 1634. If there are not major changes to the current legislation and timelines, the overall opinion seems to be it will have a major negative effect for construction throughout the industry. There are consultation processes, as I've mentioned, happening with different trade bodies, And you can also make feedback directly to the government. Will this affect project timelines and compliance? Most definitely. If this move, if we move from BS 476 to EN 1634, the whole industry will have to undergo a huge certification program, and as such, it is likely to put back construction over the next 5 years into huge delays. It's very early in the process, though, at the moment, and there's still a lot to be cleared up and decided before we have clarity on this change. As a business involved in projects across the world with global standards such as ANSI and EN playing a major part, local standards do tend to get amended to the above standards, but the above standards do tend to get used throughout the globe in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But sometimes they also amend those and make changes to them. This creates different nuances in each individual region. This means that keeping up abreast of standards is hugely important when we're dealing all over the world. Why aren't government standards standardized globally? I don't think one reason, but to get agreement from all parties involved causes major delays in EN standards coming to market. This is just 27 countries. Imagine trying to do this globally. Major countries with different priorities, even as important as what's the biggest risk, smoke or fire, play a part in deciding code and standards, along with the durability standards linked to the fire. Today's developing frameworks are designed to change the approach to tomorrow's projects with the latest in reforms, such as the UK's Building Safety Bill and Fire Safety Act, set to further cement standards across the industry. There are also a wider focus on building components, such as architectural ironmongery and compliance with that. We're seeing a change in view towards fire safety certification and particular third-party accreditation. Type of project play a huge part in the reasons, such as the occupancy levels and how heavy the traffic through this building should be. Whether the building users know their surroundings is also really important. It's widely accepted in healthcare and hospitality projects. It's very unlikely that the occupants will actually know that building well and therefore know how to get out of that building in the event of a fire. Whereas in a residential building, it is likely most of the occupants will be aware of the building and the layout, and therefore these can be taken into consideration when you're dealing with the design of them. Communication is imperative across projects, but not just in the project, but a wider industry and even the government. All parties are important. Stakeholders need to work together to ensure best practice throughout. This comes from the industry working groups, as I mentioned earlier, the Guild of Architectural Ironmongery, or DHI for ironmongery, but also there's Door Hardware Federation and many others across different industry groups. These all play a major part in helping to affect change within our industry. RIBA offer approved CPDs, which our architects can get continuous learning points for. These are incredibly important, ensuring that architects and designers can stay up to date with changing standards. If the industry and the government can work together, hopefully this will improve the aspects mentioned above. All industries need to understand and respect how these issues affect others and work towards solving the major issues ahead. Key takeaways from our current potential changes in legislation from our perspective are that we now look to implement further testing in both directions for all hardware that is required. We will also work with industry groups to discuss and continue to keep abreast of the changing environments and continue to work with clients to make them aware of the impending changes and the complications that this may cause to both the supply chain and the certification of our products and others in the medium term. This is definitely an ever-changing environment currently, and I would suggest all stakeholders keep up to date with the changes and how they're going to affect people. I personally am constantly discussing these subjects with people at the moment, just to try and keep myself abreast, and hopefully in the hope that we will continue to try and be at the forefront of what is a changing environment at the moment. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Anything anything you've got to ask, let me know.
Hi, Daniel. It's great to be able to catch up after your session today. Thank you for providing an in-depth overview of the necessary standards for fire doors. So you mentioned the BS 476 not being able to be amended and thus not fit for purpose, but can you just clarify why this can't be changed?
Yeah, sure. So with the regards to the rules on when EN codes and standards are implemented across the whole of the European Union, it's then you're not allowed to legally change your local standards. Therefore, even though we're not part of the European Union, this is something we signed up to many years ago, and as such, no amendments can be made to BS 476. Now EN 1634 is a harmonised standard, and as such, there's been no changes made to it in over 30 years.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. So if building owners do not take the role of installing fire doors properly, what consequences for not abiding by regulations and standards do they face?
Potentially huge, and certainly it's becoming, much more onerous as well. There's, massive fines, but also criminal prosecution can be made against the building owners, but also the people responsible for those buildings.
And for any fire engineers or building owners watching, what is your main piece of advice for them going forward?
Keep up to date with the current changes. There is just so many potential changes and so many pitfalls if amendments are made to standards. The key for me is keep up to date with the standards across the board and ensure that you're comfortable with what's happening. Most people within our industry are happy to try and help, and therefore anybody would welcome helping any business owner or end user in any support / assistance they need.
Speaking about help, are there any particular associations or regulatory boards that you would recommend people reach out to ask for that?
Yeah, normally different product groups have their own in industries. Guild of Architectural Ironmongers does ironmongery. There's multiple within the door industry itself, such as the Door Hardware Federation, British Woodworking Federation. So each industry tends to have their own industry trade bodies. There's also certification bodies that would also be really helpful if ever you're looking to understand compliance.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for taking the time to speak with me, and to our attendees at Fire by Live. If anybody wants to learn more about Daniel's presentation, please do reach out to him directly on the platform, and he can answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.